Hello viewer and welcome to the second video in this series. In this video, I will be explaining how specific pieces of technology that can be found aboard craft designed by non-human intelligences function. We will be focusing on devices designed to manipulate gravitational fields. For an explanation of the visitor's basic method of amplifying and manipulating gravity, please refer to the previous video in this series. In this video, we will be focusing on gravity beam emitters. These types of devices perform two main functions aboard gravity drive craft. The first function is as a gravity lift. This device is able to generate a localized beam of gravitational energy that, when focused upon an object, will pull the targeted object towards the device. The second function is as an Einstein-Rosen bridge generator. We will focus on that function in the second part of this video. Gravity beam emitters use the same basic principles as gravity amplifiers. A useful metaphor is that a gravity beam lifter is to a gravity amplifier what a monocular is to a magnifying glass, and a gravity beam wormhole generator would be a telescope in this metaphor. All of these devices focus light or gravity, but beam emitters add extra steps to reshape space into desired topographies. A gravity beam generator works by combining the force generated by two gravity amplifiers. The first amplifier is the parabolic asymmetrical field amplifier that you were introduced to in the first video. The second amplifier is a bit different. This amplifier compresses space into a linear channel. Its cylindrical shape compresses the space within its volume into a single axis. You may have noticed that the amplifiers are divided into small plates or tiles. This is so that specific sections of the amplifiers can be charged to different levels or completely powered off or on. To create the effect, the device must be powered up in a specific sequence. First, the parabolic amplifier must be activated. Next, we must slowly activate the topmost ring of tiles at the top of the cylinder. As the top row reaches full charge, we must repeat the process for each row of tiles. This is so that the gravity waves are able to combine and not cancel each other out. The gravity waves from the parabolic amplifier reshape space so that any waves moving laterally follow a curved path towards the apex of the gravity distortion. Remember that the waves are moving through space, so if space is bent, so is the path that the waves must follow. When used in combination, the device is able to reshape space to generate some extremely useful effects. From outside the beam emitter, we are only able to detect the low-range repulsive field. To generate an attractive force, we must power down the innermost tile of the parabolic amplifier. Once we do this, the unpowered plates become gravitationally transparent. At that point, the volume of space immediately below the emitter is radically reshaped. One of the effects is that anything within the boundary of the projected volume becomes gravitationally drawn towards the emitter. That is something that you may have been expecting, but there are much more surprising effects within this volume of space. By combining the wave vectors of the two laterally oriented amplifiers, we are able to bend space to such a degree that we force spatial dimensions to run parallel that would normally be angled laterally. In this way, we are literally able to collapse normal three-dimensional space into one dimension. This means that any object or person within this volume will literally become one-dimensional. From the perspective of a person within this volume, it may be hard to detect that anything has changed. Everything within the volume remains relatively unaffected, as it is space itself that has become radically altered. Everything within the volume will simply be reshaped by the ambient space. Light from outside of the volume will follow the geometry of the altered space, so from the perspective of a person within the volume, objects outside seem to follow the same geometric parameters of objects within the volume and vice versa, even though they are radically different. By compressing space into a narrow channel, we are also compressing time. This means that in areas where space is stretched, time moves slower, and in compressed volumes time moves relatively faster. An observer outside of the affected area would see objects within the volume seeming to move slower and even stop moving at all. However, as soon as space returns to its natural shape, time would suddenly seem to accelerate as we witness the snapping back of time as it resynchronizes with the regular, ambient flow of time. An observer within the affected volume would also witness objects outside of the volume slowing down, as they themselves are physically suspended within the narrow channel of compressed space-time. both observers are viewing each other through a volume of stretched space-time, so both witness a slowing of time. However, the flow of time has only changed for the individual within the affected volume, and despite appearances, time has actually sped up for that person. Another surprising effect of the one-dimensional volume is that it changes the way that matter interacts. Any matter that lies along the path of the volume is unable to block the passage of matter moving along the axis of the collapsed dimensions. This is because the x and z axes no longer exist within the volume. Rather, they are now running parallel beside one another along with the y-axis. This means that matter within the volume now inhabits parallel axes. In practice, this allows the user of this technology to pass masses through other masses. This is how extraterrestrial visitors are able to pass themselves and individuals through solid walls. As the passenger transitions from the affected volume back to ambient space, they have stepped across an area of folded space, effectively skipping across a large distance in an instant. The matter that remained within the volume is returned back to its original state when the structure of space is returned to normal. The gravity wormhole generator takes advantage of the effectiveness of the action of stepping across folded space. The gravity beam projectors within the wormhole generator are almost identical to the beam projector of the gravity lifter, with some very specific, but subtle differences. The wormhole drive emitters are more powerful than standard beam emitters, and therefore generate a much tighter beam with a far greater range. These emitters also have another trick up their sleeves which enables them to vastly reduce the diameter of their beams, which has the effect of greatly increasing their range. A single ionized atom of a heavy element is introduced to the chamber. The dense and tightly packed unit of matter has the effect of reshaping the gravitational distortion so that it becomes focused upon the mass. This reduces the diameter of the distortion to the thickness of a single atom. This extreme level of focus vastly increases the effective range of the device from kilometers to light years. To make use of this extreme range, a minimum of 3 emitters must work together. All 3 emitters are focused upon a point in space at the desired destination of the vehicle. The affected point in space is immediately altered. This is because even though objects in space are only able to travel at speeds below the speed of light, space itself is not limited by the same constraint. Think of it as pulling a rope. As you pull on one end, the opposite end moves immediately without a delay because the two ends are physically connected. Once all 3 emitters are focused upon the same precise point of space, the emitters begin to turn toward one another along their x-axis. This rotation drags the focal point of the emitters toward the vehicle. When the focal point of the emitters is close to the vehicle, all 3 emitters rotate round their y-axis, pulling the affected space into a triangular plane, thus opening the aperture of the wormhole. As the emitters rotate through the y and x-axis, the vehicle becomes engulfed in the affected volume. The volume conforms to the shape of the vehicle because the craft is emitting repulsive gravity waves, preventing the vehicle from penetrating the walls of the affected volume. Once the craft is fully immersed within the volume, space snaps back to its natural shape and the vehicle finds itself almost instantaneously at its destination. Thank you for watching the second of my videos in this series. I did skip some minor details. For example, the gravity beam lifter is able to control the motion of objects along its projected volume by changing the diameter of its beam. Effects of gravity are only altered at the beam's periphery. Gravity is felt where the axial vectors are in transition or bent. Within the core of the beam, gravity is unaffected. This allows objects to be affected by the ambient gravity at the vehicle's location when the diameter of the beam is widened. I apologize for the lack of graphics in this section of the video. I had originally intended to release this video shortly after the first one, but the time commitment has made this extremely difficult. I would like to take a brief moment to announce that I have created a Patreon page. I will not charge for my videos. This information should be free for everyone. I will look into creating an AMA and other extra content as Patreon bonuses, but these videos will remain free to view. If I do get some contributors, I will continue to create content. If I don't, more videos may drop, but they will continue to be slow to release, if they release at all. My hope is that if this venture becomes profitable, it will provide me with the motivation needed to invest the time necessary to continue. There is a link to my Patreon in the video description, and if I create any merchandise, I will also provide a link in the future. Thank you again for taking the time to watch my video, and I hope to provide you with more in the future.